Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole and it's by user AmbitiousFrosting813. Am I the a-hole for unintentionally getting a midwife fired? I'm active duty military. My wife and I began trying for a baby about 2 years after we got married, and after a few months she got pregnant with our first child. About 6 weeks after she found out, I was deployed for a 6-month stint. Sadly, that meant I would miss all of her OB appointments except for the very first one to confirm she was pregnant. Early in her pregnancy, she decided that having a midwife would give her a better birth experience, and I was totally on board because she's the one giving birth and I wanted her to feel 100% confident in the people assisting her. It had also been decided that the people in the room, aside from medical staff, would be me, for obvious reasons, and one of our mothers. My mom lives about an hour by car from the base I'm stationed at, while her mom lives a 4-hour plane ride away. Ideally, her mom would be able to get there in time, but she loves my mom too, and was okay with her being there if labor went fast and her mom couldn't make it in time. Fast forward to me getting back from the deployment and her being really close to giving birth, like due in a week close. She was supposed to have an OB appointment that I would be able to go to, but ended up going into labor very early in the morning of the appointment. We go to the civilian hospital and they confirm she's in active labor. I called her mom, who immediately booked a flight that would have gotten her here at about noon. Then my mom, who came to the hospital a few hours later. A while later, the midwife comes in to see my wife and was rude from the start. My wife told her I was back from deployment and she calmed down a bit but was still clearly not happy I was in the room, especially once I started cracking jokes to try to distract my wife from the pain of the contractions. Then the midwife glared at me and told me to take this seriously and have respect for my wife while she's in pain. I thought her hostility was weird but was more focused on my wife and doing all I could do to support her. As it got closer to noon, my wife was almost 9 centimeters dilated, and so I decided not to go pick up her mom from the airport and had her take a cab instead, so I wouldn't have to leave for over an hour to drive to the airport. When her mom did get to the hospital, I left the labor and delivery floor briefly to go downstairs and pay the cab driver so her mom wouldn't need to. As the cab is pulling up, I got a call from my mom telling me the OB and midwife were there and the baby was coming fast. Of course, I rushed back there after tossing some cash to the cab driver so her mom and I could be there for the birth. When I got back to the labor and delivery floor, my mom was in the waiting room since she had to step out to make the phone call and also knew she would be waiting outside. I used the intercom to ask to be let back in, and to my surprise, I was denied entry. They said they had an order to not let me or anyone in to see my wife. That was really confusing, so I asked why, and was just told I wouldn't be let in and not to tie them up on the intercom or security would be called. So the three of us waited outside, since my wife didn't answer her phone as she was actively pushing our baby out. Well, over 2 hours later, she was able to call me back and asked where I had been. I told her the hospital staff wouldn't let me in, but I had been in the waiting room trying to get answers for almost 2.5 hours. Long story short, it was the midwife who told the desk staff that I wasn't to be let back in. She lied and said my wife had reported I was abusive and she didn't want me there. So not only did my poor wife have to give birth alone and without me or her mom there for support, I missed the birth of my daughter. It meant a lot to me to be there to see my baby come into the world because I missed so much of the pregnancy, and that was ripped away from me because this awful woman didn't like that I never showed up to a single appointment the entire pregnancy despite being told by my wife that I was deployed. So, with my wife's support, I filed a formal complaint about the midwife and she ended up getting fired by the OB's office. My wife is naturally on my side, but some of our friends have said I was wrong to make such a big deal out of it and taking away the woman's livelihood. Was I the a-hole for reporting her, which caused her to lose her job? I'd like the perspective of people outside the situation. Of course you're not the a-hole, OP. I'm angry on your behalf as well, and your friends who are claiming that, oh, going after her job was just too much, they're all a bunch of idiots. I would go for her license. Who knows if she's gonna do this to anybody else? She didn't like that you weren't there during the pregnancy because you were in deployment. Does this woman understand how physics works? So she decided to use her position in the room to claim that you abused your wife and lied about your wife not wanting you to be in the room. Honestly, this could have been a lot worse than you just being locked out. Filing the complaint is just step one. Good for you for getting her fired. You shouldn't feel bad about that. Because of whatever grudge she held against you, you missed the birth of your daughter. Who the F does she think she is to make that sort of a decision? No, OP, you are not the a-hole. And again, you should definitely go for her license. And what do you guys think about OP's situation? What is your judgment? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments to see what they said. Mostly Valid username says, she went against your wife's wishes and made the birthing process more stressful for her. She removed your only opportunity to watch this baby being born. She spread a malicious lie about you being an abuser to other medical staff who could have escalated by reporting the abuse, which could have impacted your livelihood. So no, F her, she very much needs to find a different job. And OP responds, that's what bothered me the most. It put unnecessary stress on my wife, who already had to go through almost the entire pregnancy without me there. She had both our moms to talk to and see, but that's not the same as a spouse. If my wife had told me she wanted both moms in the room, I would have been a little disappointed at not being there, but I would have respected her choice because at the end of the day, it was her having to do all the work. But she was very clear she wanted me there and I was denied at the last minute. Curly naturally says, not the a-hole. The midwife had some very extreme bias against you and ruined a very precious moment for you and your wife. You were right to file a complaint against her to the OB and she deserved to lose her job. I would go one step further and report her to the governing body for midwives. Because I wouldn't be surprised this isn't the first time she's let her prejudices get in the way of her patients. Good luck. And OP responds, I'll talk to my wife about reporting her to whatever the governing body is. I only reported her to the doctor's office because my wife supported that and was still recovering, so didn't feel up to doing it herself. Caspian4136 says, not the a-hole by any stretch of the imagination. The midwife outright lied about you to keep you away from one of the most important moments of your life. She lied and left your wife alone to give birth, who needed you there for support. No doubt she was lying to your wife about where you were for the whole time too. Unprofessional doesn't begin to describe that woman who has no business being a midwife. I hope she had her license revoked for what she did. Also, you didn't get her fired. She got herself fired for what she did and deserved what she got. And Expensive Flight 4799 says, F that. Anyone that says you're the a-hole is not your friend or family and they can kick rocks. That midwife was out of line. How dare she? I wish there was some way to give you back those moments. It's so unfair and unnecessary. I don't understand why people need to be so mean. I hope you guys enjoy your baby. Congrats. And OP responds, aside from being mad about my wife having to go through it all alone, I'm mad that I wasn't the first one to hold my daughter. Our plan was for me to hold her first, then my wife, then whichever grandma won the coin toss. And yeah, the grandmas both decided to leave it up to either a coin toss or paper, rock, scissors. Lizard Spock. Lol. Additional information from OP's comments. The midwife knew where I was going. I said, your mom is here. Give me a few minutes to go pay the cab driver and we'll be back up here. She told me to hurry because she wanted her mom there. From what she told me later, the midwife came back to check her a few moments later and she decided it was time to push. Also, my wife was laughing at the joke, so she should have known we were just having fun. We never found out the gender beforehand, so we had a running joke where we both suggested outlandish names for either gender. After filing the complaint, the OB was so apologetic. She assumed I had to leave the room for some reason and just didn't make it back in time. From the time my wife was determined to be ready to push to when our daughter was born, it was only about 15 minutes. My wife is an absolute rock star and pushed for all she was worth, so the baby came quickly. It wasn't until after that the OB learned I was locked out of the unit along with both moms. I don't blame the OB at all. And honestly, I thought my complaint would only get the midwife a reprimand. I didn't think she would lose her job. When I made the complaint, I phrased it more like, "Hey, just wanted you all to know she did this and I didn't appreciate not seeing my child born or being there for my wife." I didn't say I want her punished and fired for what she did. Anyway, according to the OB, the midwife implied she thinks all military members abuse their spouses, so she spoke up when my wife wouldn't for herself, but she had no answer for not letting my mother-in-law in. My wife fell asleep shortly after the birth because she was exhausted. Then she woke up about 45 minutes later and asked the nurses if they knew where I was. Which is when one of them told her the midwife said no one was to be let in per my wife's request. She panicked for a minute and asked for her phone on the table, and that's when she saw all my missed calls. Most of the nurses were apologetic and said they had worked with the midwife for a long time and didn't have a reason not to believe her. OP's edit. I took some advice and contacted JAG, military lawyers, to meet with an attorney about taking further steps. I have a meeting scheduled for Monday afternoon to discuss what can and should be done to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else in the future. Thanks to everyone who offered support, and screw those who DM'd me to tell me I'm garbage for being in the military and deserve to die because they think I hit my wife. You all have a place saved in hell. OP's edit 2. Since some people are so caught up on me paying for my mother-in-law's cab and the jokes I was making with my wife, I'll clear it up. I made jokes because she asked me to distract her from the pain by making her laugh. We were both making jokes, not just me. I also paid for my mother-in-law's cab because my wife told me to make sure I went down and paid, and also because it was the right thing to do since she didn't choose to take the cab. That was my choice since it was last minute. So the community agreed that OP was not the a-hole and he's not the one that caused the midwife to lose the job. She did that all by herself. And some people mentioned the license thing as well, and apparently OP heard them because that's what he's going to go for. So now let's move on to the update to see how the story ends. We met with the JAG attorney on Monday, and it seems like I have a good case for going after her license, as well as a possible defamation lawsuit. She's a certified nurse midwife, so she has a license that can be revoked or suspended. I'm not convinced it needs to be revoked altogether, but I do think she should be suspended for a while and forced to get more training in her field. The attorney JAG assigned to me is a parent herself and seemed genuinely appalled that someone would have to miss the birth of their child because a member of the medical staff used their influence to deny entry back into the maternity wing. More so when it's for a made-up reason that could have gotten me in a lot of trouble with the Navy. My wife was able to come with me to the meeting and had a brief conversation alone with the JAG. On the drive home, she told me what they spoke about, and basically the attorney just needed to confirm that everything the midwife said about me being abusive was false and unfounded. When my wife told her I have never and would never lay a hand on her or my child, she asked if my wife felt any sort of emotional distress about me not being there for the birth. She confirmed that she did, and that's when it was decided that we would try to build a case for more than just possible medical malpractice. We don't care about any monetary gain. If we were awarded anything, it will go into an educational account for our daughter or be donated to a charity. We are in agreement that the midwife should have to answer for what she did though. She took away a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me. Even if we have more children, I'll never get back the lost experience of not seeing my firstborn come into the world. So that's where things stand right now. Any further updates will most likely be a long way off since there's going to be a pending litigation soon. Thank you to almost everyone who commented and offered encouragement. It gave me the push I needed to seek out a legal remedy for the situation. My wife and I are truly thankful. Will it be good for you for moving forward, for building up the case and having the support that you do? Hopefully it'll all work out the way you need it to. Now, in the meantime, while we wait for an update, if you ever want to give us one, here's wishing you, your wife, and your daughter the best in the future. Thanks so much for sharing and take care. And now, let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user ThrowArray19000482. Am I the a-hole because I am intentionally not letting my neighbor in, causing her and her dog to sit outside in the dark? I live in an apartment block. To access the property after 8 p.m., you must carry your front door key with you. We were all told this prior to moving in. A tenant has moved in downstairs and she leaves the back door unlocked to allow herself to come and go without taking her key. She isn't supposed to do this, and she has been told multiple times to take her front key in case the door locks, which she has ignored. She has started treating me like a literal doorman, knocking loudly on my windows and repeatedly buzzing my apartment to try to get me to open the door for her. It is daily and it riles up my dog every time, and it always occurs after 9 p.m. I have let her in twice in good faith, then told her the third time to take her key and that I will no longer be answering. She decided to go out with her dog this evening and again didn't bother to take her key when she started buzzing and knocking on my windows loudly. I shut off my buzzer, gave my dog a treat and closed the doors, deciding to ignore her and continue watching my movie instead. This is where I may be the a-hole. It's dark out at the moment, late, and she's outside by herself with her dog. She's been out there for about 45 minutes. We also live in a shady area. Not dangerous, but definitely not pleasant at night. She has been sat outside on the doorstep on her phone, angrily ranting about me to her friends, like I'm her dad. I don't know this woman aside from her treating me like a concierge. Am I the a-hole? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. We are talking about an adult who should know how instructions work. She was told that to access the property after 8 p.m., she must carry her key with her. How difficult is that? Like, really? Grab the keychain, put her in your pocket before you leave your house. Apparently, she just doesn't want to do that. You've already opened the door for her twice and you told her that you wouldn't do it a third time. She clearly ignored you and she wants you to open the door for her again. So no, I don't think you're the a-hole for having her sweat it out and complain to her friends about you or whatever. However, if I were in your shoes, I would escalate it a little bit more and I would tell the landlord, or I don't know who's in charge of the management of the building, that she's just not following the rules and that you're done with it. And what is your judgment? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's move on to the community comments. Walkin' Woods Nolly says, report her to management every single time. It may take a while, but she will either stop or get kicked out. They have liability if they know and anyone ever comes in who should not, steals, or worse, harms someone. If they don't seem to take this seriously, tell them. Give an example, someone with domestic abuse in their past or someone on drugs who is a friend of a resident, and these types come in to hurt someone. The management is on the hook for any and all costs to the tenants and building, including medical. And OP responds, I am 100% calling the management tomorrow to lodge a report against her. It is literally 10 p.m. at night and she is still knocking on my windows. Dizzy Potato 3557 says, not the a-hole. Some people feel entitled to everything and think everyone else lives to make them favors, and they don't even see those as favors. You did everything right and in a civil way before taking action. You helped her even when she was being rude and an inconvenience. You talked to her about it and warned her that you wouldn't be opening for her again. And yet she decided to do it again. How come you are in the wrong for not answering, but she is just fine by knocking on your door during the evening multiple times and on purpose? I do feel the consequences are a bit harsh, but that's on her. She was getting used to using you for her convenience only. She needs to learn one way or another that people are not there to serve her purposes and comfort, and having someone help you when you are in need is different than taking advantage. And VT 2022 Cam says, not the a-hole. She's an adult and letting her in after disturbing you repeatedly hasn't gotten it across to her. Shady, and she's been endangering everyone's property and personal security by propping the door. She needs to learn a lesson, and after telling her, she still didn't take her key. She still had her dog with her though and was next to your house, so it wasn't that dangerous. So the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole. Now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. I opened the door. I said I wouldn't, but quite frankly, I literally couldn't go to sleep knowing she and her dog were out there. I went downstairs and opened the door and told her that this was the last time. And I will be reporting to management and calling the police if she knocks on my windows anymore. I'm gonna just hope that a few hours outside has got the message across. Sorry for everyone who told me not to give in, but it's nearing midnight here, and as much as she pisses me off, I'm not about to leave her out there. Well, it'll be hopefully a little over 2 hours of her just standing out there is enough to get the message across. But if she doesn't get it, then definitely call the police and follow through with what you said you were gonna do. So thanks for sharing, OP, and take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.